The red warning lights flashed across Commander Yuna's control panel as her ship drifted through the darkness of Sector 7. She had been traveling for 3 days straight, pushing her engines to their limits after receiving the emergency broadcast. Her crew of mixed alien species sat nervously in their seats, watching the massive structure grow larger on their view screen. Nexus Prime stretched before them like a metal city floating in space. The station was enormous, bigger than most planets Yuna had visited. Millions of lights should have been twinkling across its surface, but now only scattered sections glowed weakly. The rest lay dark and cold against the starfield. "Commander, I'm reading massive structural stress on the outer rings," called out Kato, her Vraxian navigator. His blue-scaled hands moved quickly over his instruments. "The gravitational stabilizers are completely offline. This thing is tearing itself apart." Yuna gripped her command chair as the station's distress beacon filled their communication channels with desperate pleas for help. Voices in dozens of alien languages begged for rescue, for evacuation, for anyone who could fix the failing systems. She had heard these same voices for days during her journey here. "How many beings are still aboard?" she asked. "Sensors show approximately 40,000 life forms across all decks," replied Nari, her communications officer. "Mostly Zalari families, some Corvan traders, and scattered groups from the outer colonies. They're all trapped in the central sections where artificial gravity is still working." The station had been humanity's greatest engineering achievement before the plague struck. Built 200 years ago, it served as the main trading hub for this entire sector. Humans had designed every system, every circuit, every line of code that kept the massive structure stable in space. But now, with the human population gone, nobody understood how to maintain it. "Any word from the engineering teams that were sent here last month?" Yuna asked. Nari shook her head sadly. "The Hegemony Council sent their best technicians, 12 different species, all experts in their fields. They worked for weeks trying to understand the human systems, but," she paused, checking her records, "they evacuated yesterday, claiming the station was beyond saving." Yuna stared at the dying station. 40,000 innocent beings would die if Nexus Prime collapsed. The gravitational forces would crush the inhabited sections in minutes. Yet the galaxy's smartest engineers had already given up. "Take us to Docking Bay 7, she ordered. "We're going aboard." "Commander, with respect, what can we do that the others couldn't?" Kato asked nervously. "The Council engineers had equipment we don't possess." "Maybe," Yuna replied, "but they didn't have something else." Her ship glided through the station's outer defenses, past floating debris and damaged HULL plates. The docking bay was nearly empty except for a few maintenance pods. As they landed, Yuna could feel the station vibrating beneath them. Metal groaning under impossible stress. The airlock hissed open, revealing corridors that had once bustled with activity. Now they were eerily quiet, lit only by emergency strips. Along the walls, Yuna led her team deeper into the station, following maintenance maps toward the engineering sections. "The main gravitational core is 7 levels down," she explained as they walked. "If we can restart even one stabilizer, might buy us time to evacuate everyone." They descended through empty hallways, past abandoned shops and restaurants. Personal belongings lay scattered everywhere, left behind by families who had fled in panic. The deeper they went, the louder the station's death rattles became. Then they heard it. The sound of metal being cut, sparks flying, someone working frantically in the darkness below. "There's still someone down there," whispered Nari. They followed the sounds to a massive chamber filled with towering machinery. The gravitational core rose before them like a mechanical mountain, its surfaces covered with thousands of access panels and control systems. And there, hanging upside down from a maintenance harness, was a lone figure welding connections with desperate precision. "Hello," Yuna called out. The figure looked up, pulling off his welding mask. It was a young human man, his face streaked with grease and exhaustion. His work clothes were torn and stained, his hands bleeding from working with bare metal. "You need to leave," he said simply. "This whole section is unstable." "Are you Yuna asked, recognizing him from the station's personnel files. He nodded, already turning back to his work. "I'm the only engineer left who understands these systems. Been trying to restart the core for 6 days now. The council technicians said it was impossible." Minho laughed bitterly, not stopping his repairs. "They said a lot of things. They also said I should evacuate with everyone else." He paused, looking up at the massive machinery around them. "But someone built this station to last. Someone put their heart into every circuit, every stabilizer. I'm not abandoning their work." The station shuddered violently, throwing sparks from damaged systems. In that moment, Yuna realized something the other engineers had missed entirely. This wasn't just about fixing machines. This was about understanding the human spirit that had created them. The communication panel crackled to life with angry voices. From the Zalari Council, their leader, High Administrator Vex, appeared on the holographic display with his usual stern expression. His gray skin seemed even more pale than usual as he delivered his ultimatum. Commander Yuna, you have exactly 4 hours to evacuate all remaining personnel from Nexus Prime, Vex announced, his voice echoing through the engineering chamber. Our latest calculations show the station's structural integrity will fail completely by then. There is no more time for foolish rescue attempts. Minho didn't even look up from his work. He was deep inside one of the quantum regulator housings, his legs sticking out as he wrestled with damaged components. Sparks flew from his welding torch, illuminating the dark corners of the massive chamber. Did you hear that? Yuna asked him. I heard it, Minho replied from inside the machine. They said the same thing yesterday, and the day before that. He slid out, wiping sweat from his forehead. The Zalari are good at many things, but they don't understand human engineering. On the display, Vex continued his speech to the gathered alien engineers who had returned to their ships. Representatives from the Corvan Technical Institute, Vraxian Science Collective, and 10 other species nodded in agreement. Their advanced computers had run thousands of simulations, all showing the same result: total system failure. The human technology is simply too chaotic, explained Dr. Zara, the lead Corvan engineer. Their systems don't follow logical patterns. They use intuitive connections that make no sense to our analysis programs. Exactly, agreed Engineer Vec from the hegemony. Human designs are like puzzles with missing pieces. They create solutions that work, but we cannot understand why they work. Yuna watched Minho gather an armload of spare parts from a nearby storage locker. Most of the components looked like random junk: old circuit boards, twisted metal strips, and cables that had seen better days. Any other engineer would have thrown them away, but Minho examined each piece carefully. What are you doing with those? She asked. Building a bypass for the tertiary stabilizer, he said, already sketching diagrams on a piece of paper with a stubby pencil. The original component burned out 3 days ago. The Zalari tried to fix it with a standard replacement, but human systems don't like standard replacements. He held up a circuit board that looked like it had been salvaged from a coffee machine. This little beauty has the exact frequency modulation I need. It's not supposed to work with quantum regulators, but ... double quotes. He grinned tiredly. Humans were never very good at following the rules. The station groaned around them, metal stress echoing through the corridors. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear smaller systems failing, power grids shutting down one by one. The Zalari evacuation ships were already docking in the upper levels, loading desperate families into their cargo holds. Minho, maybe we should listen to them, Yuna suggested gently. 40,000 lives are at stake. Exactly, he replied, crawling back into the machine with his improvised components. 40,000 reasons why I can't give up. Through the communication system, they could hear the alien engineers discussing their retreat. The Corvan delegation was already calculating insurance payouts for the lost station. The Vraxians were updating their databases to mark human technology as unreliable for future use. Even the patient hegemony representatives were packing their equipment. But Minho worked with a different kind of logic. He didn't use computer simulations or mathematical models. Instead, he seemed to feel his way through the repairs, trusting instincts that the other species couldn't understand. He would hold a component up to his ear, listening to sounds that their instruments couldn't detect. He would run his fingers along damaged circuits, feeling for problems that didn't show up on diagnostic screens. There, he said, connecting his makeshift bypass to the main system. Let's see if she likes this better. The quantum regulator hummed to life, its energy field stabilizing for the first time in days. Warning lights that had been flashing red suddenly turned amber, then green. A small section of the station's artificial gravity kicked back online, and they could feel the change in their bones. Impossible, whispered Dr. Zara over the communication channel. Our instruments show that combination of components should not function together. Human engineering, Minho explained, already moving to the next failed system. We don't just build machines, we make them part of us. Every circuit has personality. Every system has moods. You have to know them like family. The alien engineers watched in stunned silence as he repeated the process with another damaged regulator. Using nothing but scrap metal and hand-drawn calculations, he coaxed life back into systems they had declared permanently dead. His methods made no sense according to their textbooks, but the results spoke for themselves. "This is not science," muttered Engineer Vec. "This is magic." "No," Yuna said, watching Minho work with growing admiration. "This is something much more powerful than magic. This is a human who refuses to quit." The station continued to shake and groan, but now, there was something different in the sound. Instead of a death rattle, it was becoming a rhythm, the heartbeat of a machine fighting to survive. The massive display screens in the alien command ships showed numbers that made even the most optimistic engineers shake their heads. The probability calculations ran continuously, updating every few seconds as Nexus Prime's condition worsened. The final result never changed: 0.003% chance of successful repair. "It's mathematically impossible," declared Chief Engineer Locke of the Vraxian fleet. His scaled fingers danced across holographic controls, running the simulation for the 100th time. "The gravitational core has been dead for 6 days. The quantum matrix has completely collapsed. No known technology can restart it." But deep inside the station, Minho wasn't looking at probability calculations. He was squeezing through a maintenance shaft barely wide enough for his shoulders, following a path that the station's original blueprints claimed didn't exist. The metal walls pressed against him from all sides, and the temperature was climbing dangerously high as he approached the core's primary plasma conduits. "Commander, I'm losing visual contact," Nari reported from Yuna's ship. "The maintenance cameras in that section were destroyed days ago." "Can you still hear him?" Yuna asked, gripping her command chair as another tremor shook the station. "Barely. The communication relays are failing one by one." Through the static-filled comm channel, they could hear Minho's labored breathing and the sound of metal being cut. Occasionally he would mutter to himself, reading from something they couldn't see. Found another one of Jiho's notes. His voice crackled through the speakers. He hid them everywhere. "This one's tucked behind a coolant valve." There was a pause. As he read, "Says here the core doesn't like being rushed. You have to wake it up gently, like talking to an old friend." The alien engineers exchanged confused glances. Their computers didn't understand concepts like waking up gently. Machines either worked or they didn't. There was no middle ground in their logical systems. Dr. Zara pulled up her technical manuals on the holographic display. "Human documentation makes no sense," she complained. "Look at this maintenance log. The secondary plasma injector gets grumpy on Tuesdays. What does that even mean?" "Or this one," added Engineer Vec, scrolling through more human notes. "If the gravitational field starts humming off-key, try feeding it more power through junction box 7. These aren't engineering instructions. They single quotes poetry." But Minho understood perfectly. As he crawled deeper into the station's mechanical heart, he found more of Jiho's handwritten notes tucked into impossible places. Some were written on scraps of metal, others scratched directly into the walls. Each one revealed another secret about how the station really worked. "The main textbooks lied to us," Minho whispered into his comm unit, his voice barely audible over the station's groaning. Jiho figured out that the gravitational core isn't just a machine, it's alive in its own way. It has preferences, habits, things it likes and dislikes. He emerged from the maintenance shaft into a chamber that officially didn't exist. The room was small and cramped, filled with jury-rigged connections and handmade modifications that never appeared on any blueprint. This was Jiho's secret workshop, the place where the real magic happened. The walls were covered with equations written in human script, diagrams that looked more like art than engineering schematics. In the center of it all sat a simple wooden desk with a collection of tools that looked ancient compared to the alien technology surrounding the station. "He built a neural interface," Minho breathed, staring at the crude-looking device on the desk. Jiho actually connected himself to the station's systems. He could feel what the core was feeling. The plasma conduits around him pulsed with dying energy, their light growing dimmer by the minute. According to every calculation, they should have been completely dead by now. But Minho could see the faint patterns in their flickering. The station was trying to communicate, trying to tell him what it needed. He strapped on Jiho's neural interface, ignoring the alien voices in his comm unit warning him about the dangers of untested human technology. The moment the device activated, his world exploded with sensation. He could feel every damaged circuit, every failing system, every desperate attempt by the station to hold itself together. "It's scared," he gasped, tears streaming down his face as he experienced the station's pain. "It's been alone for months, trying to keep everyone safe, but it's so tired. Through the monitors, the alien engineers watched in amazement as began working with impossible speed and precision. His hands moved to components he couldn't possibly see, making connections that their computers said were meaningless. But with each repair, the station's vital signs grew slightly stronger. "How is he doing that?" whispered Dr. Zara. "He's not even looking at his instruments." "He doesn't need to," Yuna realized, watching the readings change. "He's not just fixing the station, he's talking to it." The gravitational core, dead for 6 days, began to show the first signs of life. Deep in its quantum heart, particles that had been scattered and chaotic slowly began to align. The process was so gradual that the alien computers almost missed it, but Minho felt every tiny improvement. "Come on, old friend," he whispered to the machine. "Just a little more. I know you're tired, but 40,000 people are counting on us." The station answered with a pulse of energy that lit up every monitor in the alien fleet. The countdown on Minho's improvised control panel reached 0. He took a deep breath, his bloody fingers hovering over the activation switch that he had built from spare parts and determination. Around him, the station's mechanical heart waited in silence, as if holding its breath for what came next. "All alien vessels, this is High Administrator Vex." The emergency broadcast crackled through every communication system. "Nexus Prime structural collapse is imminent. All personnel must evacuate immediately. This is not a drill." Across the station, panic erupted. Zalari families rushed toward escape pods, their children crying as they left their homes behind. Corvan traders abandoned valuable cargo, running through corridors that groaned and twisted under impossible stress. The Varaxian diplomatic corps activated their emergency protocols, sealing themselves into protective suits as their ships prepared for immediate departure. But in the depths of the engineering section, Minho pressed the switch. The gravitational core exploded back to life with a roar that shook every deck of the massive station. Energy cascaded through circuits that had been cold for days, lighting up systems that the alien engineers had declared permanently dead. The neural interface burned against Minho's skin as he felt the station's joy at being whole again. "Power spike detected on all levels," shouted Kato from Yuna's bridge. "Commander, the energy readings are off the charts." The station bucked like a wild animal, throwing sparks from overloaded systems. Emergency lights flashed in sequences that meant nothing to alien computers, but told a clear story to anyone who understood human engineering. The machine was fighting for its life. In the Zalari command ship, alarms screamed as their sensors detected massive power fluctuations throughout Nexus Prime. "All ships, emergency departure," ordered Vex, his voice tight with fear. "The human has destabilized the entire structure." One by one, the alien vessels began pulling away from the station. Their engines blazed as they put distance between themselves and what they believed was an imminent explosion. Only Yuna's ship remained, its hull rattling from the energy waves, washing over them. "Commander, we need to go," Nari pleaded, her hands flying over the emergency controls. "The power readings are beyond anything our shields can handle." "Not yet," Yuna replied firmly, watching the chaotic light show playing across the station's hull. "Minho is still in there." Deep in the core chamber, Minho struggled to stay conscious as the neural interface flooded his mind with the station's awakening consciousness. Every restored system felt like electricity in his veins. Every stabilized gravitational field sent waves of relief through his exhausted body. "Talk to me, Minho." Yuna's voice cut through the chaos on his comm unit. "What's your status?" "Working," he gasped, watching as the massive gravitational generators spun up to full power for the first time in months. "The core is stable, but the distribution network is fighting me. Too much power, too fast." Around him, the ancient machinery sang with harmonics that would have been beautiful if they weren't so dangerous. Plasma conduits glowed white-hot as they carried more energy than they were designed to handle. Warning displays flashed in every language known to the galaxy, but Minho only cared about one reading. The gravitational field strength was climbing toward operational levels. "All ships, maintain safe distance." Vex broadcast from his fleeing vessel. "Nexus Prime is experiencing catastrophic system failure." Repeat, catastrophic failure. But the aliens were wrong. What they saw as destruction, Minho recognized as rebirth. The station wasn't dying, it was remembering how to live. Each power surge was like a heartbeat growing stronger. Each system coming online was like a breath of fresh air filling damaged lungs. "Gravitational field at 60% and rising," he reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Structural integrity is holding." The old girl remembers how to do this through the neural interface. He could feel 40,000 lives scattered throughout the station, families huddled in their quarters, believing their final moments had come, traders clutching their most precious possessions, engineers from a dozen species watching their instruments in disbelief as impossible readings scrolled across their screens. 70%, Minho announced. 80. The resonance patterns are stabilizing. In the alien command ships, now safely distant from the station, shocked silence replaced the earlier panic. Their sensors showed something that their computers insisted was impossible. Nexus Prime was not only stable, but stronger than it had been in years. How? Whispered Dr. Zara, staring at her instruments. The quantum matrices should have collapsed. Under that much stress, 90%, Minho's voice came through the comm channels, weak but triumphant. Field stabilization complete. All primary systems online and holding steady. The massive station, which had been shaking itself apart just minutes before, now hung peacefully in space. Its lights twinkled like stars against the darkness, and its gravitational field hummed with the quiet strength of a machine that knew its purpose. Yuna wiped tears from her eyes as she watched the readings on her display. Minho, you magnificent human, you actually did it. Not just me, he replied softly. Jiho built her to last. I just reminded her how to sing. Across the galaxy, the impossible had become reality. One human, armed with nothing but determination and an understanding of what machines could become, had saved 40,000 lives. 6 months after the miracle at Nexus Prime, the galaxy had changed in ways nobody expected. Ships from hundreds of worlds now made regular pilgrimages to Sector 7, not for trade or diplomacy, but to see the station that refused to die. The massive structure gleamed in the starlight, its hull repaired, and its systems running better than they had in decades. Commander Yuna stood on the observation deck of her new flagship, watching a convoy of Zelari educational vessels dock at the station. Students from across their empire came to study what they now called the human method, though none of them truly understood what that meant. Another group of engineering students? Asked Kato, joining her at the view. The third one this week, Yuna replied. They all want to meet Minho to understand how he did the impossible. Below them, Nexus Prime bustled with activity. The station had become more than just a trading hub. It was now the galaxy's most prestigious engineering academy. Species that had never worked together before now collaborated on projects, trying to decode the secrets of human intuitive design. At the heart of it all was Minho, though he barely recognized his new life. The quiet engineer who had once worked alone in the station's depths now found himself surrounded by alien students, eager to learn. His small workshop had been expanded into a full research facility, but he still kept Jiho's original wooden desk. In the center of it all, Professor Minho called out a young Coven student, her tentacles waving excitedly as she held up a damaged plasma regulator. This component makes no logical sense according to our mathematics, but it works perfectly. How is that possible? Minho smiled, the same patient expression he wore a dozen times each day. Because Jiho didn't just design it with math, he explained, taking the device and turning it over in his scarred hands. He designed it with heart. Feel the weight of it. Listen to the way it hums. Every machine has personality if you know how to look. The Corvan student touched the component gingerly, trying to sense what Minho felt so easily. Around them, students from 12 different species watched with fascination as the human demonstrated concepts their textbooks couldn't explain. In the station's main plaza, a new memorial had been installed. The bronze plaque was simple but powerful, its words etched in every major galactic language, in honor of engineers Jiho and Minho, who reminded us that some problems require a human solution. But the real memorial was something much more significant. Commander Yuna had established the Human Engineering Preservation Project, and it had grown beyond her wildest dreams. Teams of researchers now traveled to abandoned human colonies, recovering technical manuals, personal notes, and the informal wisdom that had made human engineering legendary. We found another cache on Kepler Station, reported Nari, bringing Yuna a datapad filled with discoveries, maintenance logs, personal journals, even some video recordings of human engineers explaining their methods to apprentices. How many facilities are participating now? Yuna asked. Over 200 across 47 star systems, Nari replied proudly. The Hegemony Council has officially recognized human engineering as a protected cultural heritage. They're funding preservation efforts on 17 worlds. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. For years, alien species had dismissed human methods as chaotic and unreliable. Now those same species competed to establish human engineering programs at their most prestigious universities. The Zolari Technical Institute offered the highest salaries in the galaxy for anyone who could demonstrate true human intuitive design skills. But the real change went deeper than academic programs or research grants. Young engineers across the galaxy were learning to see their machines differently. Instead of treating technology as pure logic and mathematics, they were beginning to understand that the best engineers formed emotional connections with their work. "It's spreading," Minho told Yuna during one of her regular visits to the station. They sat in his workshop, surrounded by students from a dozen worlds, all working on projects that would have been impossible using traditional methods. "What's spreading?" she asked. "The human way of thinking," he replied. "Watching a Vraxian student successfully restart a quantum processor using nothing but intuition and persistence. They're learning that machines aren't just tools, they're partners." The transformation was visible everywhere. Alien-built ships that had once been sterile and efficient now showed signs of personality. Small modifications that served no logical purpose but made the crews feel more connected to their vessels. Space stations incorporated design elements that promoted emotional well-being alongside technical function. Even the bureaucrats had noticed. High Administrative X, who had once demanded immediate evacuation from Nexus Prime, now visited regularly to study what he called human organizational psychology. His reports to the Zolari Council praised the efficiency gains that came from treating workers as individuals rather than interchangeable parts. "The humans were right about everything," he admitted during one of his visits. "We spent centuries trying to remove emotion and intuition from our engineering. We thought pure logic was superior, but humans showed us that the best solutions come from understanding both the technical and the emotional needs of a system." As Yuna prepared to leave Nexus Prime for her next assignment, she took one final look at the bustling station. Families from across the galaxy now called it home. Engineers from species that had never cooperated before worked side by side on impossible projects. And at the center of it all, two memorial plaques reminded everyone of the humans who had started it all. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Some problems couldn't be solved with logic alone. Sometimes you needed someone who refused to accept that problems couldn't be solved at all. At the end,